Should William Nylander get a long look alongside Auston Matthews in preseason? You're listening to the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day.
You're Locked On Maple Leafs, your daily podcast on the Toronto Maple Leafs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into the Locked On Leafs podcast, a daily Maple Leaf-centric podcast hosted by myself, Mike DeStefano, and my co-host, Dave Morassutti. Today's episode is brought to you by our good friends over at Monarch Money. This Monarch Money, take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. What's happening, Dave? How are you feeling on a Monday?
Feeling pretty good.
Fantastic. And it was a nice weekend, especially for golf fans in the Toronto area. I don't know if you had a chance to get over to the Canadian Open at all. I know you're a big golf guy. You're in the Mississauga area, but to see Brooke Henderson come through at the Canadian Open was pretty nice to see. Tommy Fleetwood finally gets it done, wins the jug. So a really fun weekend in golf, and we got some Maple Leafs out speaking. A little media tour happening right now. We heard from Auston Matthews last week when he was in Toronto. Like Matthew Nyes had a chance to speak with the Toronto Sun recently. There's some comments there, and over the weekend out in Europe for the European media tour, William Nylander had his chance to speak with the media, and we got some comments there, and it really sparked a debate about what exactly is going to happen next season with William Nylander. And I guess it's kind of interesting, Dave. Like, why isn't Nylander getting more consideration to move up and take Marner's role and have Matthews and Nylander and Nyes as like one big super line? Why isn't that getting enough? Like, will they get a look at that, do you think? Like, why isn't that being talked about enough as a possibility?
I'm wondering if it's just because we haven't seen it for like over a big period, right? We just kind of default put Nylander with Tavares, these last few years, and we just kind of think the status quo would kind of stay the same. Do I necessarily agree with it? No, I think you should be open to different possibilities. And, yeah, I understand you don't want to load up the top line. I get that sentiment, but, it's not like you don't have options to consider different things, right? And we've seen Matthews play with Nylander before. It provides you an opportunity also to kind of see if other players can maybe not have to handle top line minutes if they're not capable of handling those top line minutes. And like, you're paying Nylander to be a top line player,
right?
Might as well let yourself see if he's show that he's capable. Let's see if he is. We know he is. Let's let him actually kind of do it over a consistent basis.
Yeah, and we haven't seen it because we've had Mitch Marner in the fold, right? Yeah. So, like, without Marner, though, I think that opens up the possibility for a Matthews-Nylander duo. And it's not like we haven't seen it before. Like, there's been many times throughout the careers of both these players that they've played alongside each other. Usually, it's when things aren't going right with the team and they need to mix it up to just get something different, get a different look. We'll see Nylander and Marner swap. And then Matthews and Nylander play together, Marner and Tavares play together, and that goes for an extended period of time, but it usually, finds its way back. But now that Marner's no longer in the picture, like it kind of opens up the opportunity to give it more of a longer look with Nylander up top. Like, you take a look at his numbers, him and Auston Matthews together, pretty good. Like, when they're on the ice together, 64% of the goals scored are from the Toronto Maple Leafs side. Like, that's pretty solid. And, you even look at expected goals, 54% expected goals with Auston Matthews and William Nylander on the ice together. So, usually good things are happening offensively when those two are on the ice, and you would expect it. They're very dominant offensive players. But we've had that conversation a lot where it's, okay, Marner's no longer in the fold. Who are the options? And right away, people go to Max Domi. People go to Matias Maccelli and not really think about William Nylander. But why not? Like why not have Nylander on that line? And, a guy who could be so dominant with the puck, right? Like Mitch Marner was a guy who had the most puck possession time on that line last year, right? Well, William Nylander can do a lot of the same things, right? Like he can be a super shifty guy. He can see the ice pretty well and move the puck and get it to Auston Matthews if need be. So it's something that I think we will probably get a look at for sure. And I think we'll have more consideration than in years past to have those two together. Now, what it does do, the opposite end of things is, it doesn't lengthen your lineup, and the Maple Leafs want to lengthen their lineup a little bit. And, it kind of makes you think, well, what does the second line look like if that's the case? So, you're going to have a second line of Michelli, Tavares, and Domi? Like, I don't know if that really looks good. Maybe Nyes doesn't play with Matthews after all. And maybe you're looking at a line of Nyes, Tavares, and Michelli, perhaps. And then you got Domi, Nylander, and Matthews as a top line. Maybe that's what it could look like. But there's a lot of different possibilities. Even Matthew Nyes, when he spoke last week, said, "Yeah, we're not too sure. It's we've had a few different additions to the team. Not quite sure how it's all going to look just yet. Excited to get to camp and see how it all unfolds." And I think we're all in the same boat.
Yeah, no, I'm curious of the possibilities that they will try. I do know, there's going to be a bit of an adjustment, and I'm sure not everyone's going to agree with, why are they putting XY here? Maybe they should consider this instead. That's what training camp's for. They're going to throw many things at the wall to see what will stick.
Yeah, Easton Cowan will probably get an opportunity to see what he can do in up in the top six like that. So the good thing is, with the way that they've constructed the bottom six of this roster, you don't necessarily have to think about, okay, well, we're going to want to play Matthews a lot in the defensive end of things, or we're going to want to play Tavares a lot in the defensive zone. You have a third and fourth line who's very capable of playing defensive zone minutes and getting those D zone starts. So you don't have to necessarily always think about, okay, we have to make sure that there's some defensively capable players or 200-foot players on those lines. You can have a little bit more offense on those lines. Some guys who are more driven in the offensive zone, like a Max Domi, like a William Nylander. So that is one thing about the construction of the team. It makes it different, and it makes you, a little less cautious, I suppose, when you're putting together your lines, making sure that there's defensive stalwarts everywhere just in case. Those guys you're hoping don't have to spend much time in the D zone anyway.
Exactly.
So, it lessens that burden just a little bit. All right, we'll take a quick break. When we come back, a former Leaf has retired. We'll tell you about that. And The Athletic put out their prospect ranking for the Maple Leafs. Where do they fall in terms of the top 32 of the NHL? We'll tell you that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. College football is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than the energy of tailgates and being in the stands with your fellow fans. The only downside, trying to get tickets, endless queues, hidden fees, and price that jump at checkout. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives you the advantage back to fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. You pull out your Gametime app a couple of times. I was looking to grab some Jays tickets a couple of weeks ago. Pulled out the Gametime app, and I found tickets about an hour before first pitch, and the prices went down, kept going down. They go down closer you get to first pitch or the start of the first period, and you can do that with Gametime. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Welcome back into the Locked On and Leafs podcast. Mike DeStefano, Dave Morassutti with you on the show, as we are each and every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday for the duration of the summer, which is coming up quick, dude. And then training camp. Then we're back to 5 shows a week, Monday through Friday. And man, we're only a few weeks away. This summer has absolutely flown by. It's insane.
Yeah, no, I can't wait for things to get going.
Yeah, I'm super excited for that to get going as well. So training camp just going to be underway in a few weeks here. The first game, preseason game, going to be I think September 21st is the first preseason game that we're going to get. You know what we forgot to talk about actually on Friday, which kind of caused a bit of an uproar with the fan base. Dude, did you see the price of tickets next year?
Yep.
What the hell is going on? The Maple Leaf ticket is the hottest ticket in the city. I get it. It may be one of the hottest tickets in hockey, but they were already astronomically expensive, and then they just kicked it up a notch this year. Like what? Why? Why do they got to do this? Why did the Maple Leaf?
Because people continue to pay the price, man. That's why.
Oh, it's gonna cost like $1,000 for a fan for a date night to go to a Leaf game now. Like you try to get lower bowl tickets for you and a date, it's gonna cost you $1,000. You go out there, you get a couple tickets, you buy a couple soda pops, you get some popcorn, maybe a hot dog, whatever you want to get. It's gonna be $1,000 evening. It's insane.
Like it just makes way more sense to just go on a road trip.
Dude, it makes way more sense just to drive down to Buffalo and grab yourself a pair of tickets for like $80. Like it just. At this point, it really is. And then that's why Toronto usually has a good road fan base because it is cheaper to go on the road. You can literally probably go to Detroit for an entire weekend, right? They got a Saturday night game in Detroit. Go there for the weekend and spend the weekend there, get a hotel, enjoy yourself before or after. And it would still probably be cheaper than just grabbing 2 tickets and taking a TTC down to the bank. It's crazy what tickets are going for nowadays, but people are going to pay it. They're going to pay it. And, well, we'll see if we can get into it.
Not only people are going to pay it, but people are going to pay it and then hopefully sucker people into pay the secondary market prices.
Yeah, exactly. Which is even worse. But if you use Gametime, at least you can get yourself, $20 off your first purchase using the code LOCKEDONNHL.
There's a beer right there.
there's a beer. Now you can get yourself a beer. So it just makes sense. If you are, grabbing tickets, use Gametime, at least save yourself an extra $20. All right. So Tyson Barrie actually announced his retirement today. And, Tyson Barrie had a very interesting career with the Toronto Maple Leafs. And revisionist history, we always look back on that trade and think that it was arguably one of the worst trades in Maple Leafs history and probably the worst trade in Kyle Dubas's tenure as a Toronto Maple Leaf, although he claims that the Mason Marchment Dennis Mulligan trade was the one that keeps him up at night. He said that on a Cam and Strick podcast recently. For me, it's the Kadri for Tyson Barrie deal. Alex Kerfoot was also involved in the trade, and I feel like because of that, Barrie never truly got a fair shake here in Toronto. Like the second he got here, people were like, he's not Nazem Kadri. And people just wanted Kadri back. They still want Kadri back in the fold. And since Barrie just never really found his footing here in Toronto, it turned out to be one of the worst trades ever.
No, it just felt like another one of those deals that was made where the coach and the GM just were not on sync with it.
No, not at all. Like there is no Mike Babcock's game in Tyson Barrie. None whatsoever.
No. He didn't play him he tried him on the top power play, didn't work. Okay, we're gonna take him off. As soon as Sheldon Keefe comes, Tyson Barrie, you're back on the top power play. And I think he scored in like his first game back on the top.
Something like that. Yeah. I think it was he was in Colorado or wherever he's from, I think. And it was in a game in Colorado, I think, is when he ended up getting in there and scoring. And
it's just one of those things where you have to you got to build a team not just for the GM's view, but also how the coach is planning to use the player.
Yeah,
like this just felt like, I hate to say it, but now I really look back at it, it felt like about a bunch of like the Moneyball situations where they're like, you're gonna play Hattenberg at first. No, not gonna do it. Like that's what it felt like. And I maybe Tyson Barrie wasn't the defenseman the Leafs needed really because they had Morgan Riley in terms of like that offensive defenseman on the right side.
But how long did the Maple Leafs and like the fan base clamor for a puck moving right-handed defenseman?
True.
Like the Leafs, like everyone's been clamoring that for years. It's like, I can't remember the last time the Leafs had a strong puck moving right-handed defenseman. And, that's what, was dominating the league at the time, right? So that's what everybody wanted to see. So they made it happen. So Kyle Dubas made it happen. He made a trade, sent Nazem Kadri the other way. And that was, keep in mind, after 2 straight playoffs where he had gotten himself suspended and really cost the team. So the trust factor with Kadri and the Leafs at the time was frayed. But they brought back what was considered a good puck moving defenseman. Like, look, the 2 years prior to getting to Toronto and Colorado, this guy was pretty solid. Actually, realistically, like 5 years of like top pair power play quarterback type numbers. From 14-15 to would be 18-19. He had 53 points, 49 points, had a down year with 38 points, but only played 74 games that year. And then he had 57 points and 59 points, 14 goals, 45 assists, career high 59 points the year before getting traded to Toronto. So after 14 goals, 59 points, he got 8 points in 12 playoff games for the Avalanche that year. Dubas looked at that and said, hey, we could use that. We could use that production from the back end on the blue line, and decided to make that deal, make that swap. And I'll be honest, at the time, I was not a hater of the deal. I know that this is a polarizing topic and conversation at the time, although I didn't like moving on from Kadri just because you have one of the best center depths in the NHL with Matthews, Tavares, Kadri. He was a heart and soul guy. He was someone who gave you a little piss and vinegar when the other guy's very monotoned on the ice. Like, you moved out a lot of personality and identity when you traded him. Looking back, you notice that. At the time, it's like, hey, we've got kind of a glut of centers. They really need some defensemen. Like, outside of Morgan Riley, this team had nobody on the back end. There's no one there, realistically. I think they had just gotten Jake Muzzin into the fold the year prior, so it was like really just Jake Muzzin, and that was kind of it. So they bring him in, and it just doesn't work out. Only ends up scoring 5 goals in 70 games, 39 points. He was down 20 points from the year prior in Colorado, scored 9 less goals than he did the year prior in Colorado, and then went pointless in 5 games in the playoffs for the Maple Leafs. So not a strong season for Tyson Barrie with the Maple Leafs, and certainly one that a lot of Leaf fans look at and have regret with. Kerfoot didn't really pan out to be much of anything either. Like, he was okay. He was an NHL.
Had that one goal in the playoffs, and you and I will always remember watching together.
Yeah, he did have that one goal in the playoffs, and he was a decent player in the playoffs. He was a good role player, let's say, for the Maple Leafs. He could go up and down your lineup, but he's not someone that should have been considered like a top 6 player if you had a good team. And the Maple Leafs weren't that deep at that point, and they were kind of forced to play him up in the top 6 a lot. So that's where things kind of unfolded with the Kadri trade. The returns not so great, and it kind of just got worse and worse as Kadri went on to be a Stanley Cup champion, went on to be like a 70-point guy, scored 38 goals last year. And it's like, man, could really use that in the Maple Leafs lineup right now to lengthen out this this Leafs team, give them a little bit of that truculence that Nazem Kadri, gave them when Brian Burke drafted him so many years ago. But here we are, years later, still kind of looking at that trade, thinking, man, what could have been, what should have been. And Tyson Barrie, the experience wasn't great here in Toronto. He never really found his foot. Well, that's not true, actually. After Toronto, went to Edmonton. He did have 3 straight 40-plus point seasons. Only once did he have double-digit goals. Again, 22-23 at 10 goals in 61 games. And then last year, only played 13 games in the NHL with Calgary, had 3 points in those 13 games, and then played 11 in the American League, had 5 points in 11 games, and decided, all right, that's enough. And Tyson Barrie hangs him up. So, good career, played over 800 games, over 500 points for Tyson Barrie, over 100 goals. That's pretty solid for a defenseman. But the 1 year in Toronto just did not go well, and was probably one of the worst years that he had. It was statistically pretty much the worst year that he had as a pro once he established himself as a full-time NHLer.
Yeah, because we don't count that one with Calgary. That was he was on a PTO, throw something on the wall. But I initially I was kind of I thought maybe this would be exactly what the Leafs get that right-hand shot defenseman, but it just never really panned out. Too bad, because during his time in Colorado, he was really good at scoring. Man.
He was a stud. He was like a winger.
14 goals, 13 goals. He could score double-digit goals. And Leafs fans now probably would like a defenseman that can do that on this team.
They would like have someone who could jump up and score a little bit more than what they're getting now. But again, that's not the identity of the current team. You talk about building a team to the coach. That's what they're doing now. The coach doesn't care about guys who can jump up and into the rush and score. Coach cares about defending your own net and being hard to play against. And that's what they've built. And Tyson Barrie, not that guy. He ain't that guy. And there's a lot of players out there, like an Erik Karlsson is a name that's been floated out there. Could the Leafs bring in an Erik Karlsson? He's not that guy either. I don't see that happening because it doesn't fit the mold of what this team wants to do and what Craig Berube wants to establish within the group. So I don't think we see any movement on the back end. Maybe there's still an opportunity for another addition in the forward group, but the blue line, I think, is pretty status quo. On the other side, let's get into the prospect ranking for the Maple Leafs, where they stack up against the rest of the league when it comes to their pipeline. We'll do that next here in the Locked On Leafs podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day. Welcome back into the Locked On Leafs podcast. Mike DeStefano, Dave Morassutti with you as always. And the Maple Leafs have been ranked as the 26th best NHL pipeline, according to Corey Pronman of The Athletic. So he's doing the series. He's going through every team of every team in the NHL, and he's ranking them, ranking their prospect system from 1 to 32, and the Maple Leafs coming in at number 26. Does that surprise you at all, Dave?
Not really, because the Leafs have a good couple of prospects, but they don't have the depth of prospects that some of these other teams that have also had a lot of high-end draft picks have been able to acquire.
Yeah. So under 23 is kind of the cutoff. So as long as you're still under 23 years old, that's the cutoff for being considered a prospect still for Corey Pronman, which means Matthew Nyes is still considered a prospect, which really props that up. You take Matthew Nyes off this list, it might be at the bottom, man. Like it very well could be at the bottom. I found it interesting. Like, of course, he did have Matthew Nyes here. He also considered him a below NHL average skater. I don't think that's true anymore. I think that he's certainly helped his skating. Like, I know that was the knock on him coming into the draft, and I don't know if Pronman just hasn't kept up with Matthew Nyes since then, but he certainly has improved his skating quite immensely, and I think he's NHL average at worst, not below. But regardless, considers his hockey sense average, considers his puck skills above average, and then he has high-end compete level. That's according to Corey Pronman. Easton Cowan came in as the number 2 prospect in the Maple Leafs pipeline, which we obviously expected. He considers him a middle-of-the-lineup player, says he has NHL average skating, above NHL average puck skills, NHL average hockey sense, and then high-end compete level. I like the high-end compete level. The fact that both of the top players here for the Maple Leafs both have high-end compete levels definitely what you like to see. Here's the analysis on Auston Cowan, Dave. Corey Proman wrote, Cowan wasn't quite as dominant in the OHL this year as he was last season, but he was still a top player. He's a tenacious player who's always around the puck and plays with a high energy level. He isn't big, but he wins battles, creates offense in the high percentage areas. Cowan is a strong skating winger who's also very skilled, sees the ice well, and has perimeter offense. Whether his offense in the NHL will be special is debatable right now, but he's not the most dynamic 5'11" forward you will ever see. But his compete level should make him a middle six winger. There's a lot of people that, again, a polarizing prospect, Auston Cowan, because you've got some Leaf fans out there that believe that he is going to be like the Mitch Marner replacement, the second coming, a guy you can plug into the top six, and he's going to put up the similar amount of numbers that he put up in the Ontario Hockey League. I'm not sure that's the case. Everyone I've spoken to considers him more of a middle six guy, not a top line guy. But we'll see. But he's got Auston Cowan ranked as the number 2 prospect. And sounds like he's got him ranked as pretty much an average to above average NHLer.
The funny thing is he lists him as a center, but then he talks about him being a middle six winger.
I know. Yeah, I don't know.
So it's a little nitpicking there, but yeah, I understand it. And here's the thing. If he is just a middle six player, so we're talking second line at best, third line at worst.
Yep.
Still pretty solid.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, there's a lot of first-round picks that the Maple Leafs have made in the last 20 years that have not been middle six players. I can tell you that.
No, they haven't even made it to the NHL at some points, too. Like,
right.
We just haven't really amounted to much. I know, they've tried a few defensemen. No, both Liljegren and Sandin, gone. Right? It's just those sort of things where, you know what, I have a bit higher hopes for Auston Cowan just because of what we have seen from him. Playing in his Memorial Cup tournaments have been pretty good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know people talk about that World Juniors. I don't think a World Junior tournament should ever really make or break a prospect, in my opinion. I think their overall body of work should. So, yeah. I'm surprised, just even going down. I don't know if we going to continue going down the list.
Well, yeah. Next up is Ben Danford, who was a first-round pick of the Leafs a couple of years ago, playing for the Oshawa Generals. Again, another player with high compete level and NHL average skating, below average puck skills, which we already knew. Hockey sense considered NHL average. He's a top player for the Oshawa Generals, but more of like a defensive defenseman, right? Right shot defensive defenseman who, I'm excited to get a look at because remember, he was hurt last year in training camp, so we never actually got to see Ben Danford play in any games with the Maple Leafs. So, he's a big boy, 6'2", 194 pounds. He plays the style that Craig Berube wants to see. So I'm excited to see what Ben Danford is all about. And then there's only one other player that is considered in the, future NHLer ranking in that tier, and that's Miroslav Holinka, who they took in the same draft as Danford a couple of rounds later, 151st. He's projected to play some NHL games as a completely average player. All of his skating, puck skills, hockey sense, compete level, his shot, it's all NHL average, according to Corey Proman, with an above average shot, actually. Again, Holinka played his first year in North America this past season, so we'll get more of an opportunity to see what he could do. But then after that, it's a bunch of these guys might play in the NHL. There's no top tier prospects in this Leafs team. Again, it's Matthew Knies, who's already an established player. It's kind of cheeky to have him on this list. And then you got Cowan, Danford. This Holinka cat is considered a maybe, and then the next ranking the next tier has a chance to play, and that's where you get Noah Chadwick, Tyler Hopkins, and this year's first pick in their draft, Tinas Luke Kobler, who they took in the second round. Nathan Mays is a guy they took late in last year's draft, and he's considered to have a possibility, a chance to play. But there's not a whole lot of guys There's according to Prodman, he believes there's only 4 players in this Maple Leafs prospect pipeline that will play NHL games, that he projects to play NHL games. And then the rest, it's like, yeah, maybe if development goes well. That's not a very good hit rate for the Maple Leafs.
No. And it's been kind of discussed the last few years of why this team has maybe not seen the improvements that they have, just because they haven't been able to draft well enough to help fill the needs of the roster, right? They always have to trade for certain players, or when you call somebody up from the AHL, they're not exactly playing a prominent role. They're just a body to fill in on certain nights. Like last year they were ranked 22. So I think when you look at the fact that the last few years there haven't been a lot of picks either, like they've traded a lot of their high-end picks, so they're picking a lot of guys in the 4th, 5th, 6th rounds as well, which you're taking a lot of shots, a lot of hopes that hope it works out, sort of draft picks there. And they got a C in this. No, they graded them a C in the draft this past year.
I mean, they only have 2 players from this past draft that popped up on the has a chance to play, and that was Tyler Hopkins and Tinas Luke Kobler. So we'll see what those 2 have in store for themselves this upcoming season. I'm curious to see how it all goes for these guys, and we'll see. There's always an opportunity for prospects to pop, right? Right now they're considered lower end prospects. The development time hasn't been invested as much quite yet, but with time, maybe someone will flourish into one of those 3rd, 4th, 5th round steals that you do see pop up around the NHL from time to time. The Leafs haven't necessarily had a whole lot of that recently, but there's been a lot of that around the NHL elsewhere. So maybe it's time for the Maple Leafs to uncover a little diamond in the rough at some point here. It's funny though, we're through 25, so 32 through 25 on the prospect pipeline has been announced so far. So that's what 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 teams. 4 of the 7 Canadian teams have already been unveiled. So the Canadian teams are not drafting particularly well. The Oilers at 31st, the Avs 32nd, by the way, with the worst prospect pipeline. And then 3 straight Canadian teams here. Sens at 27. So at least the Leafs have a better prospect pipeline than the Senators, apparently. Leafs at 26, Jets at 25. So,
which is surprising to me a little bit, because I thought the Senators had some decent prospects, but then you're thinking Carter Yakimchuk is their crown jewel, and then it's oh, well, what do they have after that?
Yeah, it's not a whole lot, right? A lot of them have made their way through the team. They've the last 5 years they've drafted well, and they're kind of making their way onto the club now, right? Like the Stutzles and the Sandersons, and Ridley Gregg is now with the club, and Tyler Klevin is now with the club. So a lot of their young players have kind of made their way onto the roster. It's interesting though, the Maple Leafs they didn't have a goaltender though. That's what I found kind of curious, because there's a couple of young goalies that the Maple Leafs have that I thought you could consider, and I thought maybe he didn't include goalies, but I'm just looking at the Ottawa one. He has a goaltender on the list for Ottawa, so he must have included goalies. Not too sure why he didn't include one of either Hildeby or Akhtiamov, who are considered pretty good goaltending prospects for the Maple Leafs in the has a chance to play department. Hildeby's already played. He's already played NHL games. So little surprised that those 2 didn't make the list, and no goaltenders made the list for Toronto. But not an overly stocked pipeline. We know this. It's not like it's a surprise. The Maple Leafs have 3 or 4 decent prospects who have an NHL future, and that a bunch of wild cards, we'll sees, and maybes at that point. A lot of lottery tickets for the Buds when it comes to their prospects. All right, buddy. We'll finish her up there. Good chat. Always enjoy it. We'll do it again tomorrow. Thank you, everyone, for listening and supporting the show. You can subscribe to the Locked On Leafs podcast on all platforms and receive daily Leafs content. Follow myself on Twitter at Mickey_Canuck. Follow Dave at _Morassutti. Follow the show as well at Locked On Leafs. We'll be back with another episode for you guys on Wednesday. Not tomorrow, Wednesday. But until then, keep it locked right here on Locked On Leafs.